New York City never slept. And neither did Sophia Hartwell at 38 years old. Sophia was the kind of woman that made rooms go quiet when she walked in. Not because she demanded attention, she never did, but because she carried something in her presence that people could feel before they could explain it. Power. Quiet. Absolute, unmistakable power. She was the CEO of Hartwell Global, a media and technology empire worth $14 billion. Her company owned streaming platforms, satellite networks, fashion magazines, financial newspapers, and 3 major television channels across the United States and Europe. She'd built most of it herself, starting with the $300 million company her father had left her at 29, and turning it into something that made financial analysts reach for new words. Sophia was tall, with sharp cheekbones and dark green eyes that missed nothing. She wore her dark brown hair pulled back most days, a habit from years of long meetings and longer nights. She dressed in tailored suits, always navy, always perfectly fitted, and her only jewelry was a thin gold watch her mother had given her the day she became CEO. She never took it off. She worked before sunrise and long after sunset. She read every report herself. She approved every major hire personally. She attended every important meeting, remembered every name, and held every person around her to the same impossible standard. She held herself, her executives, feared her and admired her in equal measure. Her competitors watched her the way people watch a storm on the horizon, with both dread and a strange kind of awe. Outside of work, Sophia Hartwell was almost invisible. She lived alone in a penthouse apartment on the Upper West Side of Manhattan, 50 floors above the noise and the rush of the city. Her apartment was beautiful in the way that carefully designed spaces are beautiful, elegant, expensive, and deeply impersonal. Floor-to-ceiling windows faced Central Park. White marble floors stretched from room to room. The furniture was chosen by a designer who had asked what she wanted and been told simply quiet. There were no photographs on the walls, no flowers, no evidence of a life lived warmly or messily or joyfully. She had dated a few women over the years. She was not secretive about who she was. She had never pretended to be anything other than herself, and the world had long since adjusted to that truth. But relationships had never lasted for her. Not because the women were wrong, but because Sophia never fully opened the door. She would let someone close, and then something would pull her back, some old fear she had never named. Some habit of solitude so deeply built into her that she mistook it for preference. She told herself she was content most mornings, standing at her office window on the 42nd floor with a cup of coffee growing cold in her hand. She almost believed it. On a gray Tuesday morning in November, her assistant Marcus knocked and entered her office without waiting the one person she had given permission to do so. "Morning," he said, placing a tablet on her desk. "Board moved the December meeting to the 14th. Your 9 o'clock confirmed. And you need to see this." He pulled up a video clip and left the tablet facing her. Sophia turned from the window. On screen, a woman stood in front of the New York Stock Exchange. She was holding a microphone, speaking directly into the camera with an expression that was calm and certain and completely unafraid. She had dark brown hair that the November wind was doing its best to disrupt, olive skin, and dark eyes that were warm and sharp at the same time. She was wearing a burgundy coat that was slightly too thin for the weather, and she didn't seem to care. Sophia pressed play. Hartwell Global continues its expansion into both digital and traditional media markets, the woman said, her voice clear and unhurried. Media watchdog organizations have raised concerns about the concentration of so many editorial voices under one corporate ownership. While Hartwell Global's financial performance has been remarkable, the question being asked more loudly now is whether that growth comes at a cost to editorial independence. We contacted Hartwell Global for comment. They declined. Sophia set the tablet down. "Who is she?" "Elena Vasquez," Marcus said. "Channel 7. She's been doing an investigative series on corporate media ownership for the past 6 weeks. Last night was the first time she mentioned us directly." "Why did we decline comment?" Janet handled the call while Rachel was out. She wasn't sure what to say. Have Rachel draft a response. Measured, not defensive, factual. Sophia paused, looking at the paused image on the tablet. Elena Vasquez mid-sentence, one hand slightly raised as if making a point. "And get me her background, everything, professional history, previous work." Who she is. Marcus nodded and walked out. Sophia looked at the screen for another moment. There was something about the way Elena Vasquez spoke. No performance. No theater. Just a woman who believed in what she was saying and trusted that the truth was enough. Sophia picked up her cold coffee and drank it. Anyway, Elena Vasquez had wanted to be a journalist since she was 9 years old. It started with her grandmother's kitchen table in Queens, where her abuela would spread out the morning newspaper and read it aloud in a mix of Spanish and English, stopping at every story that troubled her, asking questions out loud. But why did they do that? Who decided this? Does anyone know the real story? And then answering her own questions with opinions that were fierce and funny and always rooted in deep care for ordinary people. Elena had grown up believing that journalism was a form of love, that telling the truth about the world was a way of fighting for the people in it. She was 34 now. She had a small apartment in Brooklyn, a cat named Matilda, a coffee maker she treated with reverence, and a career that she had built story by story, source by source, year by year. She'd worked at a local Queens paper straight out of college, then a regional news outlet in New Jersey, then a digital news site in Chicago that let her do the long investigative pieces she was born to write, and now Channel 7 in New York, which had hired her 8 months ago specifically for the investigative unit. She was not famous. She was not trying to be. She was trying to be good at her work, good in her pursuit of stories that mattered, good in her commitment to telling them honestly. She was also, in the quiet hours of her life, a little lonely. She had been in 2 serious relationships. The first in her mid-20s, with a woman named Dana who was kind and warm and wanted a different kind of life than Elena, a settled life, a quieter life, a life where the job did not follow you to bed. They had parted gently. The second, 3 years ago, with a woman named Priya who was brilliant and funny and completely unable to be honest about herself. That one had ended less gently. Since Priya, Elena had kept things simple. Her work, her cat, her grandmother's weekly Sunday phone calls, her friendships, which were genuine and important to her, with a small circle of people who understood that she might cancel dinner because a source had called. She was not unhappy. But sometimes, late at night in her Brooklyn apartment, with Matilda curled on her feet and the city humming outside, she felt the specific ache of wanting someone to share things with. Not just events anyone could share events, but the interior things, the small observations, the quiet moments when something made her laugh, or hurt or wonder. She had not found that person yet. She was beginning to wonder, the small doubtful hours. If she would, on the same Tuesday morning that Sophia Hartwell was watching her segment in a 42nd floor office across the city. Elena was sitting at her desk at Channel 7 with 3 monitors open and a half-eaten bagel at her elbow. Her producer, Dom, dropped into the chair across from her. "Good segment last night," he said. "Thank you." Hartwell Global's PR sent over a statement this morning. Elena raised her eyebrows. She had not expected that. Already? What does it say? Dom slid a printed sheet across the desk. Elena read it carefully. It was good. Better than she expected. It was factual, not defensive, and addressed the editorial independence question directly rather than dodging it. It acknowledged that consolidation was a legitimate concern in the industry and stated that Hartwell Global maintained structural firewalls between its corporate and editorial operations. It was, she had to admit, a smart response. Who wrote this? She asked. PR head Rachel Simmons. But word is the CEO approved every word personally. Elena read it again. Most companies either ignore us or send us something angry. This is neither. Be careful, Dom said in the tone he used when he meant something. I'm always careful. You're always thorough, he corrected. That's different from careful. He stood up. Sophia Hartwell is not a normal CEO, Elena. She is smart, she is careful, and she is very, very powerful. Don't poke that particular situation without a plan. Elena looked at the statement again. She thought about the woman she had read about, self-made, driven, famously private. She thought about the $14 billion company, the 14 media outlets. The questions that media watchdog groups had been raising for 2 years. I have a plan, she said. Dom gave her a look that said he did not entirely believe her. He was not entirely wrong. 3 weeks later, Elena stood in the lobby of the Metropolitan Museum of Art and reminded herself that she was working. She was there to cover the annual Hartwell Foundation Gala, a charity event that raised money for press freedom organizations globally, which Elena found both admirable and slightly ironic, given the question she'd been raising about Hartwell Global's own impact on press freedom. Her editor had sent her because the guest list included half the most powerful people in American media, and because Elena was the best in the unit at getting people to say things they had not planned to say. She was wearing a deep green dress she had borrowed from her friend Rosa, who was taller than her and had insisted on lending it even after Elena pointed out that it was too long. Rosa had hemmed it in 20 minutes flat and pushed her out the door. Elena moved through the crowd with a small recorder in her bag and a glass of sparkling water in her hand, smiling at people and listening carefully and storing things away, the way she always did at events like this, not for any specific story, but because you never knew what would become important later. She had interviewed 4 senior media executives and was talking to the head of a press freedom nonprofit when she felt a shift in the room. It was subtle, a slight turn in the direction people were facing, a small ripple of attention moving through the crowd. Elena turned to see what had caused it. Sophia Hartwell had arrived. Elena had seen photographs. She had watched video. She thought she was prepared. She was not entirely prepared. Sophia was wearing a deep navy gown, simple, long, perfectly cut, and she moved through the room the way very confident people move, which is to say, without appearing to try. She was taller than Elena had imagined. She was also more human-looking, which was an odd thing to think. But in photographs, Sophia Hartwell always looked almost sculpted, a little unreal in her composure. In person, there was something warmer, a slight smile when she greeted people, genuine attention when she stopped to speak with someone, a way of listening that made the person she was listening to feel like the most important person in the room. Elena watched her for a moment longer than was professionally necessary. Then she turned back to her conversation and told herself to focus. She managed it for about 40 minutes. She was standing near the edge of the main gallery, making a note in her phone when she became aware that someone had stopped nearby. She looked up. Sophia Hartwell was 3 feet away, talking to a man Elena recognized as a media lawyer. She was slightly turned away from Elena, not noticing her. Elena stayed very still, not because she was hiding, but because she was a journalist and stillness was a professional habit. She heard Sophia say, "The firewall structure isn't just policy, it's contractual. Every acquisition includes it." "Critics won't accept that," the lawyer said. "Critics don't have to accept it. They have to find evidence against it." "They won't." There was no arrogance in her voice. It was simply a statement of fact. Elena typed a note into her phone. At that precise moment, Sophia turned, perhaps sensing the attention. Perhaps by chance, and her eyes met Elena's. There was a pause. Brief, maybe 2 seconds. But Elena felt it the way you feel a pause in music, as something with weight and meaning. Sophia's expression shifted very slightly. Recognition, Elena realized. She knew who she was. Elena held her gaze steadily. She was not going to look away first. She was surprised to notice. Slightly holding her breath, Sophia excused herself from the lawyer and walked toward Elena. "Elena Vasquez," she said. "Not a question." "Sophia Hartwell," Elena replied. Equally not a question. Up close, Sophia's eyes were a very unusual shade, dark green with gold in them, catching the gallery light. Elena catalogued this in the professional part of her mind and ignored what the rest of her mind was doing with it. "I read your series," Sophia said. "I read your statement." The ghost of a smile. "What did you think of it?" "It was good," Elena said honestly. "Better than I expected." "What were you expecting?" "Something defensive." "Or silence." "Silence would have told you more than I wanted you to know," Sophia said. "And defensive would have told you I was worried." "Are you worried?" The smile became slightly more real. "No, then you have nothing to object to." "I didn't say I had nothing to object to," Sophia said. "I said I wasn't worried." "Those are different things." Elena studied her for a moment. Sophia Hartwell was, in person, considerably more interesting than she had expected. More layered. There was something underneath the composure, not hidden exactly, but held carefully like something precious kept just out of reach. Would you be willing to speak on record? Elena asked. A proper interview. I'd give you full questions in advance. Sophia actually considered it. Elena noticed rather than giving an automatic no. My PR team would need to be involved, of course, and I'd want to see the full context of how it would be used. I can show you the framework of the series. Another pause. Sophia looked at her with those gold-green eyes. Send a formal request to Rachel Simmons, she said. I'll consider it. Thank you. Sophia gave a small nod and began to turn away. Then she stopped. The dress is a good color for you, she said. Elena blinked. Of all the things she prepared herself for Sophia Hartwell to say, that was not one of them. By the time she thought of a response, Sophia had walked away back into the crowd, which closed around her the way water closes around a stone. Elena stood still for a moment, then she took a sip of her sparkling water and reminded herself, very firmly, that she was working. Elena sent the formal interview request the next morning. She spent 40 minutes on the email, which was longer than she usually spent on professional correspondence. She told herself it was because the subject was complicated. She partially believed this. Rachel Simmons called her back within 2 hours, which was fast, and told her that Sophia Hartwell had agreed in principle, pending review of the series framework. Could Elena send that over? Elena sent it. 3 days later, Rachel called again. Miss Hartwell had reviewed the framework. She was willing to proceed. Was Elena available the following Thursday? Elena was available the following Thursday. She spent the days between preparing with the same thoroughness she brought to every significant interview. She read everything: financial reports, industry analyses. Old interviews, there were very few of those. Profiles, academic papers on media consolidation, Hartwell Global's acquisition history, the structural details of their editorial firewall contracts. She made pages of notes. She drafted questions and crossed out the weak ones and refined the strong ones. She also, in the evenings, found herself thinking about the 2 minutes at the gala. The way Sophia had said her name. The way their eyes had held for just a moment too long. The unexpected comment about the dress. She told herself this was normal. Sophia Hartwell was an interesting person. Elena was a journalist. Interesting people occupied her thoughts. This was simply professional engagement. She told Matilda this while feeding her Thursday morning. Matilda was unimpressed. The interview was scheduled for 11 o'clock in Sophia's office at Hartwell Tower. Elena arrived at 10:45. Was met by Marcus in the lobby and taken up in a private elevator that opened directly into the executive floor. She had been in a lot of impressive offices in her career. This one was different. Not because of the size or the view, though both were extraordinary, but because of the quality of quiet in the room. It felt like a place where decisions actually happened, rather than where they were announced. Sophia was on a call when Elena entered. She held up one finger 1 minute and Elena nodded and stood by the window, looking out at the city. From 42 floors up, New York looked like a model of itself. Elena could see Central Park, the green of it still holding against the November gray. She could see the river to the north, silver under the pale light. She thought about how Sophia looked at this view every day and wondered what it felt like, whether it was still impressive or whether you eventually stopped seeing it. You're early. Elena turned. Sophia had ended her call and was standing behind her desk, watching her with that same careful attention she had noticed at the gala. I'm always early. Elena said, so am I. Sophia came around the desk and gestured toward the seating area, 2 chairs facing each other, a low table between them. Shall we? They sat. Elena set up her recorder with Sophia's agreement, opened her notebook, and looked at the woman across from her. In daylight, without the gallery lighting in the crowded room, Sophia was somehow both more and less intimidating. More because there was nowhere for the impression in daylight. Without the gallery lighting in the crowded room, Sophia was somehow both more and less intimidating. More because there was nowhere to hide from her attention. Less because she seemed, in this surprised Elena, slightly more human here, in her own space, without a crowd watching her perform the role of Sophia Hartwell. She was wearing a dark navy blazer over a white shirt, her hair down today, which Elena had not seen before. It softened her. Not much. But a little. Shall we begin? Elena asked, whenever you're ready. Elena looked at her first question in her notebook. Then she looked up and decided to skip it. Why did you agree to this interview? She asked instead. Sophia was quiet for a moment. Because you're good, she said simply. And because the questions you're asking deserve real answers, not just PR responses. Elena had not expected that either. Most CEOs in your position would avoid this conversation entirely, Elena said. Most CEOs in my position are afraid of it, Sophia replied. I'm not afraid of honest questions. I'm only uncomfortable with dishonest ones. Then I'll be honest with you. Elena said, I'd be disappointed if you weren't. The interview lasted 2.5 hours. It was the best interview Elena had ever conducted in her career. Not because Sophia was easy, she was not. She pushed back on several questions with precision and intelligence. She refused to answer 2 questions and explained clearly why she was refusing. She corrected Elena twice on specific facts, and both times she was right, but she was also unexpectedly open. Not personally, she gave nothing personal. But professionally, she was honest in a way that was rare. She acknowledged the legitimate concerns about media consolidation. She explained the firewall structures with real detail. She talked about mistakes she had made in 2 acquisitions and what she had learned from them. When it was over, Elena sat back in her chair and realized she had filled an entire notebook. Sophia was looking at her with an expression that was hard to read. Somewhere between satisfaction and curiosity. Was that what you needed? Sophia asked. It was more than I expected, Elena said honestly. Is that good or bad? For the story, it's very good. Elena paused. For my original assumptions about you, it's a little humbling. Something shifted in Sophia's expression. Not quite a smile. Something warmer than that. What were your original assumptions? Elena considered being diplomatic. Then she remembered that Sophia had specifically said she was only uncomfortable with dishonest questions. I assumed you would be guarded, performative, that you would give me polished answers designed to protect the company and tell me nothing real, and instead you told me real things, Elena said. That's harder to write about, actually. It's much easier to write about people who are hiding something. Sophia laughed. It was a real laugh surprised out of her. Genuine and warm, nothing like the composed, controlled presence she wore like a second skin. It lasted only a moment, but it changed her face completely. And Elena felt something move in her chest that she immediately told herself was simply the satisfaction of making a difficult subject laugh. I'll take that as a compliment, Sophia said. It was meant as one. They sat for a moment in a silence that was. Elena noticed, surprisingly comfortable, then Marcus knocked and opened the door. Your 12:30 is here. Sophia stood. Elena stood. They looked at each other across the low table. Thank you, Elena said. Genuinely, when does the segment air? 2 weeks. I'll send Rachel a preview 48 hours before as agreed. Sophia nodded. She extended her hand. Elena shook it. Sophia's hand was warm and her grip was firm, and she held the handshake 1 second longer than was strictly necessary. Or maybe Elena imagined that. She was still thinking about it on the elevator. Down. She was still thinking about it on the subway home. 2 weeks later, Elena sent the preview to Rachel Simmons at 9 in the morning. At 9:45, her phone rang. It was not Rachel. It was Sophia Hartwell. Elena stared at her phone for 1 full ring before answering. Elena Vasquez. It's Sophia. A pause. Hartwell? I know, Elena said. Then she wondered if that sounded strange. I mean, I recognized your voice. Another pause, shorter. You watched your own segment, of course. It's good, Sophia said. It's very good. It's also not entirely flattering to me. No, Elena agreed. But it's fair. Yes, Sophia said. It is. A beat. I'm not calling to object. I'm calling because I wanted to tell you that myself rather than having Rachel send a formal response. Elena leaned back in her chair. Outside her Brooklyn window, the November sky was doing something complicated with light and clouds. I appreciate that, she said. There was a silence on the line. Not an uncomfortable one. Elena had this strange feeling that Sophia had called for a reason she had not yet said. There's a conference next week, Sophia said. Media industry. I'm speaking on a panel about exactly the things your series is examining. I thought you might want to be there. Elena sat up straighter. Are you inviting me? I'm informing you, Sophia said carefully. What you do with the information is your own decision. Elena smiled at her empty apartment. That's a very careful distinction. I'm a very careful person. I'm starting to notice that. Another silence. Warmer than the last one. The conference is Thursday, Sophia said. 11 a.m., the Langham Hotel. Panel is called Media Power and Public Trust. I'll be there, Elena said. I know, Sophia said simply. And hung up. Elena looked at her phone for a long moment. Matilda jumped onto the desk and walked across her keyboard. Stop. Elena told her. Matilda sat down on the keyboard and stared at her. I know, Elena said. I know. The Langham Hotel conference room held about 300 people. And nearly every seat was filled. Elena sat in the fourth row with her notebook open and her recorder running, watching the panel assemble on stage. 4 people, a media professor from Columbia, the head of a journalism nonprofit, a former FCC commissioner, and Sophia Hartwell. Sophia was the last to sit down. She was wearing a charcoal gray suit today, her hair up again, a pair of simple gold earrings. She scanned the room with practiced ease as she settled into her chair. And Elena was almost certain, not completely certain, but almost that Sophia's gaze found her and paused for half a second before moving on. The panel was remarkable. The professor was smart. The nonprofit head was passionate. The former commissioner was measured and experienced. Sophia was different from all of them. She spoke the way she had spoken in Elena's interview, directly, without performance, with an intelligence that felt almost physical in the room. When she disagreed with the professor about regulatory approaches, she did it with such clear and specific reasoning that the professor nodded along even while being contradicted. When the nonprofit head raised the exact concerns Elena had raised in her series, Sophia did not deflect or dismiss them. She engaged with them seriously, acknowledged what was legitimate, and pushed back on what she believed was unfair with evidence rather than emotion. At one point, the moderator asked the panel, can a corporation that owns 14 major media outlets truly claim to support press freedom? There was a shift in the room. Everyone leaned slightly forward. Sophia was quiet for a moment. Then she said, that is exactly the right question to keep asking. The day we stop asking it is the day the answer becomes no. The room was still. My job, Sophia continued, is not to make you trust me. My job is to build structures that make trust reasonable. There is a difference. Trust given without evidence is just hope. Trust earned through accountability is something you can stand on. Elena was writing so fast her hand ached. After the panel, there was a reception in the adjoining room. Elena worked it professionally, talking to the professor, the nonprofit head, several journalists she knew. She was deep in conversation with a media lawyer when she felt that same shift in the air she had felt at the gala. She turned before she consciously decided to. Sophia was across the room, talking to a group of 3 people. But she was looking at Elena. When their eyes met this time, neither of them looked away quickly. It lasted long enough to be undeniable and short enough to be deniable, which Elena recognized as a very specific and somewhat dangerous kind of moment. She excused herself from the lawyer and walked towards Sophia. Sophia said something to her group and took 2 steps away from them, meeting Elena in a small open space near the windows. Good panel? Elena said. You were in the 4th row. Sophia said, I told you I'd be here. You were writing the entire time. That's what I do. Sophia looked at her. What did you write about my answer? The last one. Elena considered. Then she turned her notebook around and showed Sophia the page. In her fast handwriting, trust earned through accountability is something you can stand on. Use this, Sophia. Read it. Then she looked up. You're going to quote me. Of course I'm going to quote you. It's the best thing anyone's said all day. Something in Sophia's expression shifted again, that thing Elena kept noticing. The slight softening, the slight opening. The sense of a door unlocking just a little. Have you had lunch? Sophia asked. Elena blinked. No, there's a restaurant 2 blocks from here. Good food, quite enough to talk. No cameras. She paused. I'm not suggesting this in any official capacity. I'm simply asking if you've eaten. Elena looked at her steadily. You're asking me to lunch. I'm asking if you've had lunch, Sophia repeated, the edge of that real smile appearing. These are different things. Elena almost laughed. You said the same thing about the conference. Different things. I make careful distinctions. So you said. Elena held her gaze for a moment. Yes, I'll have lunch with you. The restaurant was small and warm and tucked between 2 larger buildings on a side street. The kind of place that only existed because someone loved it enough to keep it there. Dark wood tables, soft lighting, a menu handwritten on a chalkboard. They were given a corner table without Sophia apparently asking for one. Elena suspected the staff simply knew. They ordered Elena a bowl of soup and bread, Sophia a salad she barely touched. They had wine. Elena almost said she shouldn't because she was technically still working. And then she thought about the careful distinctions Sophia kept making and decided that this lunch was its own thing. Separate from everything else, they talked for 2 hours. Not about the interview. Not about the series. Not about Hartwell Global. They talked about books. Sophia read constantly history mostly and biography. Elena preferred novels and long-form journalism. They argued gently about whether fiction or nonfiction told truer stories. And neither of them won and neither of them minded. They talked about the city. Sophia had lived in New York her whole life except for 4 years at Harvard and 2 years in London. Elena had grown up in Queens, left for college in Ohio, moved back because she could not imagine living anywhere else. They found they loved the same neighborhoods and for entirely different reasons. They talked about work, not the specific work between them, but the feeling of it. What it meant to them. Sophia said that most people assumed she was motivated by money or power, and that this was incorrect. She was motivated by building something that lasted, by solving problems that were hard, by the specific satisfaction of making a good decision in a difficult moment and watching it ripple forward. Elena said she was motivated by the stories that no one else was telling, the ones that were inconvenient or complicated or required someone to sit with them long enough to understand them properly. Sophia listened to this with genuine attention. You're describing exactly what good journalism should be, she said. Most people in your position don't say that. Most people in my position are afraid of good journalism, Sophia said. I'm not. It keeps me honest. Elena looked at her across the table. In the warm light of the small restaurant, with her jacket off and her hair slightly less perfect than it had been at the conference, Sophia looked not relaxed exactly. Because Elena was beginning to understand that full relaxation was not something Sophia easily allowed herself, but present. More present than Elena had seen her. Can I ask you something personal? Elena said. Sophia's expression became careful. Not closed careful. You can ask. Do you have anyone? Elena said. I mean outside of work. Anyone close? A pause. Sophia looked at her wine glass. My assistant Marcus, she said. He's been with me 11 years. He's the closest thing I have to a friend in my daily life. Another pause. That probably sounds sad. It sounds honest, Elena said. Sophia looked up. I had a relationship end 2 years ago. She was wonderful. I was not present enough. Not open enough. She said this matter-of-factly, as if she'd examined it from every angle and arrived at a verdict about herself and accepted it. I work too much and I don't let people close easily. These are not new discoveries. Why are you telling me this? Elena asked quietly. Sophia was quiet for a moment. Then she said, I'm not entirely sure. I don't usually tell people things I'm not sure about. Elena understood this as the significant thing it was. She held it carefully. I'm not close to enough people either, she said. I tell myself it's the job. That's partially true. But I think the real answer is that I'm very good at understanding other people and not very practiced at letting them understand me. Sophia looked at her. Yes, she said softly. That's exactly it. They sat with that for a moment. Outside the window, the November city moved past in its usual hurried way. Inside at their corner table, time felt like it was moving at a different speed. This was not a professional lunch. Elena said eventually. No, Sophia agreed. I'm not entirely sure what it was. Neither am I. Sophia's gold-green eyes were steady and warm and held a question she was not quite asking. But I don't think that's a problem. Elena looked at her for a long moment. Neither do I, she said. It started with a text message 3 days after the lunch. Sophia. The segment aired this morning. It was excellent work. Elena stared at it for a full minute before typing back. Elena, thank you. I heard from 3 different sources after it aired. Your quote is the one everyone is talking about. Sophia. Which quote, Elena? You know which quote. A pause of several minutes. Then, Sophia. Trust earned through accountability. Elena. That's the one. Another pause. Longer. Sophia. Are you free Saturday morning? Elena felt her heart do something she told herself to ignore. Elena, I could be. Why? Sophia, there's a museum exhibit opening, photography. I have 2 tickets and no one to go with. This is not an official invitation. I'm simply informing you that I have 2 tickets. Elena laughed out loud in her empty apartment. Matilda looked up. Elena, you and your careful distinctions. Sophia, well? Elena, I'll go with you. Sophia, good. 10 a.m. I'll send you the address. Elena put her phone down and sat with the feeling that was spreading warmly through her chest and told herself several sensible things. She was a journalist. Sophia was a subject she had covered. This was professionally complicated and personally uncertain, and she should be thoughtful and careful. All of these things were true. She went on Saturday. Anyway, the exhibit was at the International Center of Photography in Midtown, and it was extraordinary, a collection of documentary photographs spanning 60 years. Images of the world in its most honest and difficult and beautiful moments. They walked through it slowly. Neither of them rushed. Elena noticed that Sophia stopped longest at the most complex images, the ones where the human story was layered and not simple, where the photographer had resisted the easy emotion and stayed with something harder and more true. In front of one photograph, a woman standing in a doorway of a building half destroyed by something, her face holding an expression that was not grief exactly, but something older and more private than grief. Sophia stood for nearly 3 minutes. What are you seeing? Elena asked softly. Endurance, Sophia said. She's not broken. She's just carrying something very heavy. A pause. I find that more moving than the images of obvious suffering. Elena looked at the photograph again through that lens. You're right, she said. The ones who are still standing are the harder images to look at. Sophia looked at her. Because we recognize ourselves in them. Elena met her gaze. Yes. They stood together in front of the photograph for another moment. Close enough that their shoulders were almost touching. After the museum they walked, neither of them had suggested it. They had simply both turned in the same direction when they reached the street and kept walking. The city was cold and bright, a rare clear December day with winter sun low in the sky. They bought coffee from a car and walked through Central Park, talking about everything and nothing. Sophia told her about her mother, who had died 7 years ago, who had been the person she called when things went wrong and the person she wanted to call still, sometimes out of habit. Elena told her about her abuela, who was 82 years old and still spread the newspaper on the kitchen table every morning and still asked those fierce, loving questions. She sounds remarkable, Sophia said. She's the reason I do what I do, Elena said. She taught me that paying attention to the world is a form of love. Sophia was quiet for a moment. Then she said, I've never thought about it that way. But I think that might be why I do what I do as well. In a different way. Building something that lasts, Elena said, remembering. Yes, Sophia looked at her. You remember things? It's my job to remember things. You remember things the way people remember things that matter to them, Sophia said quietly. Not the way people remember things they're cataloging for later use. Elena stopped walking. Sophia stopped too. Turning to face her, they were standing on a path in the park. Bare trees around them, winter light falling at a long angle. Other people passing but somehow not touching the particular bubble of quiet they were standing in. You're very perceptive, Elena said. So are you. Then Elena said carefully, that this has stopped being a professional relationship. Sophia held her gaze. Her expression was very still, but her eyes were not still. Her eyes were doing something complicated and tender and a little afraid. I know, she said. And you're here anyway. Elena said. I'm here anyway, Sophia confirmed softly. Elena breathed in the cold air. I don't know what this is, she said. I want to be honest about that. I don't know what it is either, Sophia said. I want to be honest about that too. They looked at each other on the winter path. I'd like to find out, Elena said. If that's something you want. Sophia looked at her for a long, serious moment. Then something happened in her expression. The careful composure shifted. Not much, just enough, like a door opening by an inch. And what came through that inch was something warm and real and a little vulnerable. Yes, she said quietly. That's something I want. December in New York was cold and beautiful and full of light. Elena and Sophia began, very carefully, to find each other. They met for coffee early on Tuesday mornings before the city fully woke up, at a small place near the park that neither of them had been to before and that quickly became theirs. They texted in the evenings, not long messages, but consistent ones. The kind of messages that said, I'm thinking about you without saying it in those words. Sophia sent her an article about a photographer she had thought about since the museum. Elena sent her back a piece of long-form journalism she thought Sophia would find interesting, and Sophia texted back 40 minutes later. I read the whole thing. You were right. They went to a bookshop on a rainy Saturday afternoon and spent 2 hours moving through the stacks, pulling books off shelves and handing them to each other without explanation, building a kind of conversation that had no words but said a great deal. Sophia bought Elena a novel she had never heard of. Elena bought Sophia a biography of someone Sophia admired. They did not discuss this. They simply did it, but things were not without difficulty. Elena's producer Dom pulled her aside one afternoon with an expression she recognized. Tell me I'm wrong, he said. About what? Elena asked, though she knew. About the fact that you've been spending time with Sophia Hartwell. Elena said nothing. Elena. Dom's voice was not unkind. You covered her. You're in the middle of a series that directly involves her company. If anyone finds out that you and she are, we haven't defined what we are, Elena said. That's not the point, and you know it. She did know it. She had known it since the museum. She'd been holding the knowledge carefully, the way you hold something fragile, not quite ready to put it down. I'll talk to my editor, she said. Yes, Dom said. You will. She talked to her editor that evening. Her editor, a sharp woman named Grace who had been in journalism for 30 years and had seen everything, listened without interrupting. You need to disclose it, Grace said. And you need to step back from covering Hartwell Global directly. I know. Someone else can take over the series. You've built the foundation. They can continue it. I know, Elena said again. The word was small and cost something. Is it worth it? Grace asked not unkindly. Elena thought about Tuesday mornings and the bookshop and a door opening an inch. I think so, she said. Then handle it right, Grace said. And Elena, be careful. Not professionally, personally, women like Sophia Hartwell carry a lot of weight. Make sure she's ready to share it. Elena called Sophia that night. I need to tell you something, she said when Sophia picked up. Tell me. I disclosed our friendship to my editor today. I'm stepping back from covering Hartwell Global. There was a silence on the line. Because of me, Sophia said quietly. Because of me, Elena corrected. My choice. My decision. Another silence. Longer. Elena, I don't want you to, Sophia. Elena kept her voice steady. My editor is right. It's the ethical thing to do. I'm not telling you this to make you feel responsible. I'm telling you because I don't want there to be anything between us that isn't honest. A long pause. I've been thinking, Sophia said slowly, about something you said. About paying attention being a form of love. Elena waited. I think I've been paying attention to you since the moment Marcus showed me your segment, Sophia said. I told myself it was professional interest. I told myself a lot of things. A pause. I'm not very good at this. I want you to know that. I'm not good at opening. I try and then I pull back. I've done it before and hurt people who didn't deserve it. I know, Elena said gently. You know, and you're still here. I know, and I'm still here. Another silence. But this one was the warmest silence Elena had ever sat inside. I don't want to pull back, Sophia said quietly. I want to try not to. Then try, Elena said simply. That's all I'm asking. Something changed after that phone call, not dramatically. Not all at once. But in the way that real things change gradually. Steadily, like a season turning, Sophia began. In her careful way, to open the door a little more each time, she invited Elena to her apartment for the first time on a Wednesday evening in mid-December. Framing it as dinner she had cooked, which surprised Elena, who had somehow assumed Sophia Hartwell did not cook. She cooked well. She made pasta from scratch, standing in her enormous cold kitchen in a sweater, her hair loose, slightly flowery. Utterly unembarrassed about it, Elena sat at the kitchen island and watched her, and felt something she recognized as happiness, not the large theatrical happiness of events, but the quiet, deep happiness of being exactly where you want to be. They ate at the table by the window, with the city laid out below them, and talked for 4 hours. About childhood. About fear. About the specific loneliness of being very capable in a world that sometimes made capability feel like a wall between you and other people. My father was proud of me, Sophia said at one point, turning her wine glass slowly on the table. But he didn't really know me. He knew what I could do. He never quite understood who I was doing it for. Who were you doing it for? Elena asked. Sophia was quiet for a long moment. My mother first. She believed in me before I believed in myself. And then for myself, once I found out, I actually loved it. Not the power. The building. The solving. She paused, searching for the word. The craft of it, Elena offered. Sophia looked at her. Yes, exactly that. Elena reached across the table and touched Sophia's hand. Just briefly. Just her fingers over Sophia's. Sophia looked down at their hands. Then she turned her hand over and held Elena's fingers loosely in her palm. They stayed like that for a moment, the city glittering below them, the quiet apartment around them. 2 women sitting at a table holding hands in the specific gentle way of people who are at the very beginning of something real. I'm not used to this, Sophia said quietly, looking at their joined hands. Neither am I, Elena said honestly. Is that strange? That neither of us is used to it. I think it means we're both paying attention, Elena said. Which is apparently a form of love. Sophia looked up at her. Her eyes were very green and very warm, and there was something in them that Elena had not seen before, something unguarded, something that had let go of its careful hold. Yes, Sophia said softly. I suppose it is. The week before Christmas, Elena went to Queens for Sunday dinner at her abuela's house. It was the same as it had always been, small and warm and full of noise. Cousins arriving in waves, food appearing endlessly from the kitchen. Her abuela holding court at the head of the table with the newspaper folded beside her, plate and opinions about everything. After dinner, when the cousins had moved to the living room and the noise level had risen to its usual Sunday height, Elena sat with her abuela in the kitchen, helping with the dishes. You look different, her abuela said without preamble. I look the same, Elena said. You look like someone who is thinking about a person, her abuela said. You have always had a face that shows exactly what you are thinking, Elena Maria, even when you believe you are hiding it. Elena smiled at the soapy water. There is a person, she admitted. Tell me. Elena told her in the shorthand of people who love each other well, not every detail, but the shape of it. The gala, the interview, the museum, the Tuesday mornings, the phone call, the dinner and the table and the quiet apartment above the city. Her abuela listened without interrupting, which was rare. When Elena finished, her abuela was quiet for a moment. She sounds complicated, she said. She's complicated. So are you. Elena laughed. I know. The complicated ones are worth it, her abuela said. But only if they are trying. Only if they show up, even when it is hard. Love is not a feeling, Elena. Feelings are easy. Love is a decision you make every day. Elena dried a bowl. She's trying, she said. She told me she wanted to try. Then let her, her abuela said simply. And you try too. On Christmas Eve, Sophia texted, I know this is presumptuous, but I don't want to spend tomorrow alone, and I don't want to pretend I don't want to see you. Would you come over? Elena read it 3 times, then she typed, what time? Christmas morning was quiet and gray and soft, with the particular stillness the city found. On that one day of the year, Elena arrived at Sophia's apartment at 10 with a bag that included coffee from the good place near the park, 2 pastries, and the biography of Sophia's admired subject. Now finished, and with 3 pages of her own notes tucked inside. Sophia opened the door in a sweater and dark trousers, her hair down, no watch on her wrist. This last detail struck Elena as significant in a way she could not fully explain. Sophia without her armor. In the quiet of Christmas morning. You brought coffee, Sophia said, from the good place. Sophia looked at her for a moment. Something moved across her face that was close to wonder. Come in, she said softly. They spent the day in Sophia's apartment, which Elena slowly began to understand was not cold at all. It was simply waiting. It had been waiting for sound and laughter and someone, sitting cross-legged on the expensive sofa with a book and a coffee cup and a cat's worth of ease. Elena was not cross-legged, she did not know Sophia well enough yet to be cross-legged, but she was comfortable in a way that felt different from any previous version of comfortable. They cooked together badly. In Sophia's case, with a complicated recipe she had chosen optimistically, and with genuine competence in Elena's case, so that the actual Christmas meal was mostly Elena's work while Sophia stood nearby being useful in the ways she could be and laughing at herself in the ways she couldn't. The laughing at herself was new. Elena had seen Sophia laugh that surprised, genuine laugh she had produced in the interview. But this was different. This was Sophia laughing at her own imperfections without any tension in it, without the slight defensive edge that very capable people sometimes had around their incapability. She was simply amused by herself. And this ease was the most intimate thing Elena had seen from her yet. After dinner, they sat by the window with wine and the city spread below them, quiet for Christmas. A few lights moving on the streets far below. Thank you for coming, Sophia said. Thank you for asking, Elena said. Sophia was looking at the city. Her profile was clean and still in the low light. She was holding her wine glass loosely, a small smile on her lips. I called my father this morning, she said. We talk on Christmas. It's always a little formal. But this year I told him I was happy. I don't usually say things like that. What did he say? He sounded surprised. And then pleased. He said, she paused. A small smile. He said he was glad to hear it. Elena looked at her. Are you happy? Sophia turned to look at her. The city light was warm on her face. Her eyes were soft and very serious and entirely unguarded. Yes, she said. I am. Elena held her gaze. So am I, she said. They sat in that warmth for a long, gentle moment. Then Sophia set down her wine glass and turned a little more toward Elena on the sofa. Close, not quite touching. The kind of closeness that is its own form of conversation. Elena, she said quietly. Yes, Elena said. Not answering a question. Answering the question underneath the question. And Sophia, who was careful about everything, who built walls and held things at a distance and moved through the world in a fortress of composure. Sophia leaned forward and pressed her lips softly against Elena's cheek. It lasted only a moment. It was gentle and certain and warm. When she pulled back, she was looking at Elena with that completely unguarded expression. The door not just open by an inch now, but open. Really open, letting light through. I'm sorry if that was, Sophia began. Don't, Elena said softly. Don't apologize for that. Sophia looked at her. Then very slowly she smiled. The real smile. The one that changed her whole face. Elena reached up and touched Sophia's face with her fingers just briefly. Just a touch, and Sophia closed her eyes for a moment like someone receiving something they had not allowed themselves to want. Outside the window, a light snow had begun to fall, so quietly that neither of them noticed for a while. January came in sharp and cold and changed everything. A media news site published a story. The headline read, Channel 7 reporter and Hartwell Global CEO more than professional? It was not much. A photograph taken at the conference reception, Elena and Sophia standing close together near the windows. A quote from an unnamed source saying the two had been seen together socially. A series of questions framed as journalism but designed as innuendo. Elena read it at 7 in the morning and felt her stomach drop. She called Sophia immediately. "I've seen it," Sophia said. Her voice was composed. Perfectly composed. Elena had learned to notice when Sophia's composure was real and when it was armored, and this was armored. "Are you all right?" Elena asked. "I'm fine, flat, careful." "Sophia, I need to speak with my PR team this morning." "I'll call you later." And she was gone. Elena sat with her phone in her hand. She understood, in her journalist's mind, exactly what was happening. Sophia was managing a crisis the way she always managed crises, pulling back inside the fortress, assembling resources, controlling the narrative. It was the right corporate response, but Elena was not a corporation, and the door that had been opening, so carefully and slowly and beautifully, had just closed. 3 days passed. Sophia texted once. "I'm sorry for going quiet." "I'm managing the situation." Elena wrote back, "I understand." "Take the time you need." She did understand. And she hated that she understood. Because understanding it did not make it hurt less. On the 4th day she called, Sophia answered on the 2nd ring. "Elena." "I'm not calling about the article," Elena said. "I'm calling about you." A pause. "I'm fine," Sophia said. "Are you?" Silence. "Sophia." Elena kept her voice gentle but steady. "I'm a journalist. I understand crisis management. I understand why you pulled back. I'm not angry about it." A pause. "But I need you to know that you can manage the story and still talk to me. Those are not the same problem." A very long silence. "I know," Sophia said quietly. "I know they're not the same problem." Another pause. "I do this. When something threatens something I care about, I close up. I try to protect it by protecting myself. I know it's not the right response to people." "I know it." "I know you know," Elena said. "I'm not asking you to be different. I'm asking you to let me be in the room even when you're managing something." Sophia was quiet for a long moment. "That's very hard for me," she said honestly. "I know it is," Elena said. "Try anyway." A pause. Then, softly, "Will you come over tonight?" "Yes," Elena said. "I'll come over." That evening, they had the first truly difficult conversation of whatever they were to each other, not an argument. Neither of them raised their voices. But it was honest in a way that honest conversations are painful. Where the truth costs something and you pay it anyway. They sat in Sophia's living room with the lights low and the city quiet outside. "I need to tell you something," Sophia said. She was sitting upright, her wine glass untouched, her hands folded in her lap. "About why I go quiet when things get hard." Elena waited. "My last relationship," Sophia said slowly, "ended because I did exactly what I did this week. Something happened, a professional crisis, actually not so different from this, and I closed completely. I stopped talking to her. I managed the problem and left her standing outside it for 2 weeks." A pause. "When it was over, she told me she felt like she didn't exist when I was in crisis mode. That I could make people disappear from my awareness when I needed to focus." She looked at her hands. "She was right." Elena was quiet, giving this space. "I don't want to do that to you," Sophia said. "I'm telling you this because I think you deserve to know that I have this pattern. And because I want to try to be different. But wanting and being are not the same thing, and I don't want to promise you something and then fail to deliver it." Elena looked at her for a long moment. "I have patterns too," she said. "I get absorbed in my work in a way that can make the people around me feel like they are the work. Like I'm paying the same kind of attention to them that I pay to a story where they are observed rather than known." Sophia looked up at her. "I've been told this," Elena continued quietly, "by people who loved me. They were right too." She paused. "We are both people who are very good at a version of paying attention that is slightly separate from the person we're paying attention to. Too journalistic. Too analytical. Not enough just being." Sophia stared at her. "You just described it exactly." "We might be the same kind of person," Elena said. "Which might be why this has felt different from the beginning. Because you understand the pathology. Sophia almost laughed. Pathology. I'm not being clinical, Elena said. I'm saying I see you. The real version. Not the magazine version. Not the boardroom version. And I'm not frightened by what I see. I'm here anyway. Sophia was very still. And when you go quiet, Elena continued, I won't chase you desperately. I'll wait. But I'll wait right here, visibly, so you know I haven't gone anywhere. And when you come back, you don't have to explain the whole week. You just have to come back. Sophia looked at her with those open green eyes. And Elena saw something happen in them, something the rest of Sophia's face was trying to contain but couldn't quite. Why are you being this kind to me? Sophia asked quietly. It was an honest question, slightly broken, like someone asking a question they had not planned to ask. Because I see what you are underneath the armor, Elena said simply. And what you are underneath the armor is worth being kind to. Sophia looked down. Elena saw her press her lips together. She recognized the specific effort of someone who did not cry easily, trying not to cry. She did not draw attention to it. She simply moved closer on the sofa until she was beside Sophia. Close enough that their arms touched after a moment. Sophia leaned very slightly, just slightly against her. They sat like that for a long time. The city quiet outside, the room warm around them. February came softly. Without fanfare, the article had faded, as articles do. Elena's editor Grace had handled the professional side cleanly. Elena had officially stepped back from covering Hartwell Global. The disclosure was on record. And the rest of the media industry had moved on to other things to be interested in. What remained, once the noise cleared, was simply them, and what they were simply was two people falling in love. Not dramatically. Not with grand gestures or overwhelming moments. But in the accumulated weight of ordinary things, the Tuesday coffees that had become a fixed point in both their weeks. The text that had become the first thing Elena checked in the morning. The way Sophia had started leaving a spare key on her kitchen counter without mentioning it. And the way Elena had started using it without asking. Sophia's apartment was no longer cold. It was not a dramatic transformation. Sophia had not redecorated. But there were small changes. A novel of Elena's on the coffee table. A second coffee cup by the machine. A note in Elena's handwriting on the kitchen island, gone for a run. Back by 8 that Sophia had folded carefully and put in her desk drawer. Which she would only admit to herself and which told her, when she thought about it, something true about how much she cared. Elena watched Sophia change slowly. The way you watch a landscape change with a season, not in any single moment, but in the accumulation of moments. She laughed more. She talked about herself more, not the professional self, the person self. She called Elena when things went badly at work, not to manage the situation but simply to say it was a hard day and hear an honest response. She was learning to let someone in. It was not perfect. She still went quiet sometimes when the pressure was very high. Elena still occasionally went into journalist mode in her personal life, observing, cataloging, being present in the wrong way. They bumped against each other's sharp edges and backed up and tried again. But they tried again. That was the thing. Neither of them ran. On a Sunday morning in late February, Elena was sitting at Sophia's kitchen island with her laptop, working on a story when Sophia appeared from the bedroom in a sweater, her hair loose and slightly chaotic in a way she only allowed when it was just them. Holding 2 cups of coffee. She set one beside Elena without speaking and sat across from her with her own, reading the Sunday paper in the paper version, which Elena had discovered was one of Sophia's private rituals. The paper newspaper. Read slowly on Sunday mornings before the week began. They stayed like that for an hour, working and reading in the same warm quiet. The city below them. The light coming in at a low February angle. Matilda, who had been introduced to this apartment 2 weeks earlier and had immediately and firmly annexed the cashmere throw on the bedroom chair, asleep in the other room. Elena looked up from her laptop at one point and watched Sophia reading the paper. Her head was slightly bent, a small frown of concentration between her brows. She turned a page. She sipped her coffee. She was completely herself, not performing, not managing, not being CEO Sophia Hartwell of Hartwell Global. Just a person sitting in her kitchen on a Sunday, Morning. Elena felt something so full and warm in her chest that she had to look back down at her laptop. Sophia looked up. What? Nothing, Elena said. You were looking at me. I was. Elena looked back up. You look very human right now. Sophia raised an eyebrow. As opposed to? As opposed to the version of you I first thought I knew, Elena said. The $14 billion one. Sophia's mouth curved. And which version do you prefer? This one, Elena said simply. By a significant margin. Sophia looked at her for a moment with those warm green eyes. Then she looked back at her newspaper, but she was smiling as she read. It happened in March, unexpectedly. On a Thursday evening, they were in Elena's Brooklyn apartment, smaller and warmer and messier than Sophia's. Full of books and notebooks and Matilda's various territories. With a view of a brick wall and a fire escape instead of Central Park. But Sophia had told her once that she liked it better than her own apartment, which had startled them both. They had cooked dinner together, really cooked together. Not one leading and one attempting, but working side by side in Elena's small kitchen with actual coordination. Passing things without asking, adjusting temperatures before being asked. In the comfortable rhythm of people who have learned each other's physical habits. After dinner they were sitting on Elena's small sofa. Close together, Sophia's head resting on Elena's shoulder. Elena's fingers moving slowly through Sophia's hair. The television on, but neither of them watching it, Sophia said. I had a dream about my mother last night. What happened in it? She was sitting at the kitchen table in the house I grew up in. And she looked at me and said, you found her. A pause. And I knew in the dream exactly who she meant. Elena was very still. I woke up and it was 4 a.m, Sophia continued quietly. And my first thought was about you. Not about work. Not about whatever was happening the next day. Just you, a pause. That's new for me. Elena did not speak. She kept her fingers moving gently through Sophia's hair. My mother would have liked you, Sophia said. She liked people who were brave in quiet ways. She always said that loud, brave people got all the attention, but the quiet, brave ones were the ones who actually changed things. She sounds extraordinary, Elena said softly. She was. A pause. I miss her most when something good happens, Sophia said. Isn't that strange? Not when things go wrong. When they go right, because you want to share it with her. Yes. Elena pressed her lips to the top of Sophia's head. Sophia went very still, the kind of still that means someone is receiving something carefully. After a long, warm silence, Sophia lifted her head and looked at Elena. Her eyes were clear and soft and absolutely certain. I love you, she said. Quietly, simply, like a fact she had known for some time and was now simply stating. Elena looked at her. The word landed in her chest like something coming home. I love you too, she said. Just as simply. Just as certainly, Sophia looked at her for another moment. Then she pressed her forehead against Elena's, closing her eyes. Elena closed her eyes too. They stayed like that, foreheads together, eyes closed. In the small warm apartment with the brick wall outside and Matilda, asleep on the bedroom chair and the city going about its business below. 2 women who had been alone in their different ways. Finding in each other the specific kind of being known that neither of them had found before. Spring came to New York. People who write about love tend to write about beginnings and crises and grand moments. What they write about less, but what matters more, is the ordinary sustained reality of choosing someone every day. This is what Elena and Sophia learned that. Spring, love looked like Sophia coming to Elena's apartment on Wednesday nights, even when she was exhausted from a 17-hour day. Because Elena had said once that Wednesday was her loneliest night of the week, and Sophia had stored this the way. Sophia stored all important information permanently, to be acted upon. Love looked like Elena learning which of Sophia's silences meant she needed to be drawn out and which meant she needed to be left alone. And learning to tell the difference without having to ask every time. Love looked like Sophia sitting in Elena's grandmother's kitchen in Queens for a Sunday dinner in April, being quizzed by Elena's abuela with the specific loving ruthlessness of a woman who had been asking fierce questions her whole life, and genuinely passing because Sophia was honest about her failures as well as her achievements. And Elena's abuela respected honesty above everything. Afterward, in the car going back to the city, Elena said, "She likes you." "She told me I was too thin and needed to eat more," Sophia said. "That means she likes you." Sophia was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "She asked me if I would take care of you." Elena looked at her. "What did you say?" "I said I would try every day." A pause. "And that I hoped you would take care of me too." Elena reached across the car and took Sophia's hand. What did she say to that? She said, Sophia smiled slightly. She said bueno. And gave me more food. Love looked like the difficult. Thanks to Dot, it looked like an April night when Elena missed a dinner because a source called at 7 and she was at the office until midnight and genuinely forgot, not chose to forget, but forgot in the total absorption of a breaking story. And Sophia sat in a restaurant alone for 40 minutes before understanding what had happened. It looked like the conversation afterward, which was hard and honest and necessary. Elena genuinely remorseful. Sophia genuinely hurt. Neither of them pretending it was fine when it wasn't. It looked like Sophia saying, I know this is who you are. I knew it going in. But I need to matter enough to be told, even in 30 seconds, that you can't come. It looked like Elena saying, you're right. You do matter enough. I let the work swallow everything, and that's not fair to you. I'm sorry. It looked like Sophia believing the apology not because Elena said it, but because Elena changed her behavior afterward. Setting a specific rule for herself, whatever happens, 30 seconds, one text. Can't make it. Story broke. Tomorrow. Love was learning and adjusting and learning again. In May, Sophia had the hardest week of her professional life. A major acquisition fell through at the final stage. The board questioned her judgment publicly in ways that were unprecedented in her tenure. A financial analyst published a piece suggesting that Hartwell Global was overextended and that the CEO was losing her edge. Sophia did not lose her edge, but she came very close to losing herself. Elena saw it happening, the gradual tightening, the longer silences, the increasing formality in small things. The way Sophia started talking about the situation in purely analytical terms, even in private, as if she was giving a board presentation instead of talking to the woman she loved. On a Thursday night in May, she called Elena at 11 p.m. I'm sorry to call this late. Don't ever apologize for that, Elena said. What's happening? A long pause. And then something happened that Elena had not heard before from Sophia Hartwell. The armor cracked entirely. I don't know if I'm right, Sophia said. Her voice was quiet and stripped of everything. I've been certain my whole career. Every decision. And I don't know anymore if the certainty was real or if I just convinced myself it was because uncertainty felt like weakness. Elena was out of her bed and moving to the kitchen before she consciously decided to stay on the phone with me, she said. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Elena, you don't need to. I know I don't need to, Elena said, pulling on her coat. I want to. Stay on the phone. She talked to Sophia on the subway about nothing important, just keeping the line open, letting Sophia hear her presence, asking small questions, keeping the connection. By the time she knocked on Sophia's door, the worst of it had passed. But the openness remained. Sophia opened the door in the gray sweater, her hair loose, her eyes tired in a way Elena had not seen before. Elena walked in and simply held her. That was all. She wrapped her arms around this powerful, contained, extraordinary woman who had built an empire and run it brilliantly and tonight could not quite hold herself up, and she held her. And Sophia held her back with a tightness that said everything she was not saying. They stood in the hallway of the penthouse apartment for a long time. Eventually, Sophia said against her shoulder, I'm not usually like this. I know, Elena said. I don't usually need, everyone needs, Elena said. That's not weakness, Sophia. That's just being a person. Sophia was quiet. You told me once, Elena said softly, that you wanted to try. To stay open even when it was hard. She pulled back just enough to look at Sophia's face. This is what that looks like. This is you trying. And you're doing it exactly right. Sophia looked at her with exhausted, grateful, completely open eyes. I don't know what I would do without you, she said quietly. You'd manage, Elena said. You always manage. But you don't have to manage alone anymore. Sophia pulled her back in. Close outside, May rain began to fall on the city. Soft and steady. June came, and the city warmed, and something settled between them, not the settling of something ending, but the settling of something finally becoming itself. They moved between apartments with the easy rhythm of people who have stopped thinking of their spaces as separate. Sophia learned the Brooklyn coffee shops. Elena learned which of the penthouse's rooms had the best light at different hours. Matilda had conquered both locations and seemed smugly pleased about this. They took their first trip together in July, a long weekend in the Hudson Valley. A small rented house with a porch and a view of the mountains and no agenda except being somewhere together that wasn't the city. Sophia had not taken a real vacation in 4 years. She had told Elena this with a matter-of-factness that Elena found both impressive and heartbreaking. She checked her email the first morning. Elena said nothing. She checked it the second morning. Elena said still gently, "The company is still standing." Sophia looked at her phone and then put it face down on the porch table and left it there. By the third morning, she was sitting on the porch at 8 a.m. with coffee and a book, which was the most still and unburdened Elena had ever seen her. She came out with her own coffee and sat in the other chair, and they read together in the morning mountain air, not speaking. Perfectly content. "This is the first time in 4 years I have sat outside in the morning and not thought about work," Sophia said eventually. "How does it feel?" "Terrifying," Sophia said. "Then, and very good." Elena smiled at her book. In the evenings they cooked on the porch and ate under the stars and talked with the ease of people who had learned each other's full language, not just the words but the pauses, the specific quality of different silences, the meaning of a particular look. One evening, on the last night of the trip, they sat on the porch steps watching the sky go dark over the mountains, and Sophia said, very quietly, "I want to ask you something." Elena waited. "I want to ask if you would consider." Sophia stopped. "Tried again. I have been thinking about what home means. And what I have realized is that home for me has become wherever you are." She paused. Her voice was careful and earnest and slightly uncertain in a way that Elena found more endearing than anything. "I'm not asking you to give anything up. I'm asking you to talk inside or building something with me." Elena looked at her in the growing dark. Sophia's profile was lit by the last of the evening, and she was looking at the mountains with a focused expression that Elena recognized as the look she wore when she'd made a decision and was standing behind it. "Are you asking me to move in with you?" Elena asked quietly. "I'm asking you what you want," Sophia said carefully, "and telling you what I want, and asking if those things might be compatible." Elena looked at her for a long moment. "My lease is up in September," she said. Sophia turned to look at her. "I've been thinking about what I want home to feel like," Elena continued, "and I keep arriving at the same answer." She paused. Your terrible kitchen layout that makes no sense. Sunday mornings with the paper newspaper. Matilda on the cashmere chair." She paused again. "You?" Sophia looked at her with those steady, open green eyes. "September," she said. "September," Elena confirmed. Sophia nodded slowly. And then the real smile broke across her face, that wide, genuine, completely unguarded smile that she kept only for these private moments, and Elena felt her heart do the thing it always did when that smile appeared. She leaned over and kissed Sophia's cheek. Then her jaw, then the corner of her mouth. Sophia turned fully toward her, and they kissed in the dark on the porch steps with the mountains ahead and the stars beginning to appear and the last warm light of summer all around them. Elena's article was published in a national magazine in August, a long, deeply researched piece about media consolidation, editorial independence, and the future of journalism. It was the best thing she had ever written in. It was careful and honest and fair. And it neither celebrated nor condemned Hartwell Global, but examined the real and complicated questions with the respect they deserved. It won an award. In her acknowledgments, she thanked her editor Grace, her producer Dom, her grandmother and SH, who taught me that the most powerful people are not the ones who control things, but the ones who build them with enough integrity to let them stand on their own. 3 people in the industry understood immediately who SH was. Sophia read the piece at her kitchen island, their kitchen island, on a Sunday morning with her paper newspaper beside her and Matilda on the counter, and Elena asleep in the next room. She read it twice. Then she sat for a long moment, looking at the last paragraph. Then she got up and went to the bedroom door. Elena was asleep on her side, her dark hair across the pillow, morning light coming in through the Zoe curtain. Sophia stood in the doorway for a moment. The woman she had watched on a tablet screen in her office on a cold November morning, composed and certain, a little fierce, standing in front of the stock exchange in a coat too thin for the weather, was asleep in her bedroom, and every single careful, controlled, composed thing that Sophia had built around herself over years and years had been taken apart, gently and completely, by this particular woman's specific and extraordinary way of paying attention. Sophia leaned against the doorframe. "You're staring," Elena said without opening her eyes. "I am," Sophia agreed. Elena opened one eye. "Come back to bed. It's 9 o'clock. It's Sunday." Sophia stood for one more moment. Then she walked across the room and got back into bed. And Elena turned over and put her arm around her without ceremony or drama. And Sophia lay in the Sunday morning light, in the life she had built and the love she had finally, after all the careful years, let herself have, outside the window. The city moved and breathed and went about its magnificent ordinary business. Inside, 2 women lay together in the quiet, paying attention, which was, after all, a form of love.